And she was actually trafficked throughout her childhood, going to school every single day. Had no idea that the local community, that her family member, I think it was an uncle or something like that, was trafficking her. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Trafficking Free America Podcast. Today we're going to have our lovely guest, Morgan. I am the Executive Director, Oree Freeman, for the U.S. Institute Against Human Trafficking. And we are going to be talking today about the school system here in Florida. Morgan is an amazing counselor, and we're going to get her insight and her education and all of her experience around this issue. Welcome, Morgan.
Thank you.
How long have you been a school counselor?
This will be my fourth year with internship, being a school counselor. And then before that, I was a social worker, though, in the foster care system for 6 or 7 years.
Wow.
So, yeah.
What was that transition like?
I got my master's, and it's really cool to, as a social worker, you're doing the paperwork and more advocacy side for kids, going to court and filling out the paperwork for all the county stuff and everything, and you're directly impacting the kids, but you're not asking them, like, how does this make you feel? They had that counselor assigned to them. So then now that's what I wanted to do, and now being at a school and getting to more talk to the kids of what their feelings are, their fears, their thoughts, and just sitting with them in that instead of being the one that runs around and is the one that advocates. So it's really cool to see both sides. You're taking care of the child, in it. But
I would think you came with a lot more experience too.
Yes. There's a lot of teachers and other school counselors that they don't have that at all. And if you're have never been in it or known anyone that's been in foster care, it's hard to relate, There has to be like a veil that, you got to see behind that curtain of that whole different life that's out there.
Yeah, I could imagine. I left recently another training we were doing. And one of the things that social workers were stating about all the assessments that they have to do.
Yes.
And all the paperwork.
Yes.
And I could imagine now you get to do a lot more hands-on.
Yeah.
And relationship building with the kids. You get to see them every day. Because when I think about my experience, just personally, outside of professionally, that's where you have the most contact.
Right.
Is when you're in a school.
Yes.
Every single day.
Yep.
And the people get to know you. I could imagine that was definitely a different transition too, though, going from emergency response.
Yes.
To now working as a counselor. What would you say when it comes to that? When you come in contact with a child at the school that you might know or that you've worked with before, whether if you haven't worked with before, what would be the difference in the response for a child that might have been identified as experiencing some form of exploitation versus being a social worker at the time?
So usually on the social worker aspect, I had already I'd get a case and that CPI had already been out there, that Child Protective Investigator, CPS, and I'd already had the facts and given the report of what's been happening, where now as the school counselor or a teacher, you're the first that you see more probably unidentified kids. And as a social worker, you're going out there because someone has identified a kid already as being either physically, sexually, or emotionally abused or neglected.
Does the state of Florida have any resources or previous in my work we'll have SEED tools or assessments that sometimes teachers could use in order to identify a child that it may be exploited? Do they have that in the Florida school system?
They do not. We have a tool that we use, and the school counselor, me, the psychologist, and the social worker, we have a tool that does self-harm and harm to others tool. We have that, and that's what we use to assess. Everyone in the state of Florida that works for public county schools are mandated reporters, but there's no training and no tools really other than that form we sign when you become a teacher or work for the district that you are a mandated reporter if you see or hear anything. But then a lot of teachers are really scared, or people who are not in the field directly like me or the social worker, to make that call. And they usually come to me and tell me everything, and they're like, you go call CPS. And I'm like, no, I'm not the one who heard it, but I will sit next to you and do it with you. And so I wish there was. The county that I work in, though, has a really cool material that is preventative, and the kids it's for the kids. The teachers are in the room with me, but it's made by she's a former Florida senator, and her name is Lauren Book, and she's on the East Coast, like North Miami, and it's called Safer, Smarter Kids, and the kids all have to watch 5 episodes, and it's with it's cartoon, so the kids love it. It's she's a cartoon, there's a couple other kids, and then there's a blue dog named Buddy, and she teaches, for kindergarten, it starts with stop. Teaching kids stop, that's not safe, and there's different scenarios, and she goes from someone talking to you at a parade, and then to even your private parts are behind your bathing suit, and who do you trusted triangle, you need to know 3 people that you would tell if anyone were to touch those private parts behind your bathing suit or tried to, and it's really in depth. And then even in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, it gets into online safety and people talking to you online and using safety. And she created all this because she was sexually abused by her nanny as a kid. And so she runs an amazing organization, a couple different ones, but Safer, Smarter Kids is what our county uses. And I've had 2 or 3 kids, tell, usually after I do that lesson, there's 1 or 2 kids that'll be like, I need to tell you something, but you're in my trusted triangle. And so it's I'm really, not every county in Florida does it, but the county I work in, and it's a really cool prevention curriculum.
It opens up the door for conversation.
Yeah.
It definitely does. I know that in many other states, there's a lot of different policies and stuff around the nation where they have to talk about it, or they have to have the training for the students. And it's really good that you all are implementing that, because sometimes in different states they've had where they have to talk about it, but it's literally a 30-minute conversation and not in depth of they actually have to watch 5 episodes. It opens up conversation versus just being a part of the curriculum to just check off the box. Because what I know that I've seen professionally is sometimes it's an uncomfortable conversation. And it's really hard for school age youth. But the most important piece, I would assume, is talking about healthy boundaries. And healthy relationships and everything, because definitely sounds like a door opener. How do you all, walk me through a scenario. If in your pastime as throughout this time being a school counselor, if you had a child that said, hey, I want to talk to you about some things that are happening at home, and they're not necessarily saying that they're being abused by the parent, but they're talking about maybe someone is having them take pictures. How would the school, or legally, what happens once you get that information and the report is made? Or are there limitations? Because a lot of times I feel like we point the finger at someone throughout a child's particular life of what they could have done better. But I don't think we talk about the red tape and the limitations of what we can do. So I can give you an example for myself of just the case management that I used to do. Working at a homeless shelter and literally seeing a parent in the act of using narcotics in front of their child. 2 parents. And having to make the CPS report. And in that moment, there's different things that I could have done. I could immediately call law enforcement, what we're trained to do.
Right.
Or I can also call our emergency staff to come and support their client while this process is getting ready to take place.
Yeah.
Because they're also going to have to take a drug test and things like that to see if there's any narcotics in there. Because, I mean, it's my word against theirs.
Right.
Right? Other than just the evidence that could be there or they could, get rid of it.
Right.
But one of the barriers that I found was after I made the report, I didn't know anything else.
Yeah.
I don't know where those children end up. I don't know if the parent goes into custody. I don't know if I don't know. And so could I have done something differently? Maybe, but I feel like there's also a disconnect sometimes in programming.
Right.
From social services and then with the nonprofit side of it.
Yep.
Or the school. So
Yep.
what would be some barriers or limitations you all have come across when you're encountering maybe someone that could be a potential victim?
That story resonates. There's so many coming from my social worker background. Our number one thing I know working in social work is CPS tries to keep the child in the home at possible. And like you were saying, they could have gotten rid of the narcotics or something like that, or trying to find a less traumatic way of helping the family without removing the children. Because I know a lot of people I work with think, oh, let's just remove the children right away. But it's like, well, let's try to help this family as a whole. Like CPS wants to think, is there anything I can do that's in-home services so that we don't have that trauma of taking the kids and then putting them back? Can the parents start working on whatever? Is it drug-related? Is it verbal abuse? There's things like sexual abuse and then domestic violence that need to be separated right away. But I've had a fellow school counselor, like it was in that part of the city, she would see parents in car lines using marijuana, and she was like, is that, like, do I want to remove the child just for that? Or that's kind of what is socially acceptable in that community, or what's, it'll do more harm. So of just having conversation, maybe pulling them in for a meeting. Our county has different resources through just our the education system to help families. And so just pulling in the local school social workers to help with that. But there is a disconnect, like you're saying, like the school social work and our whole county education system doesn't work directly with the CPS, the people that remove the kids, and they will not talk with them, possibly here and there in a situation, unless that parent brings it up at court, like, I'd like this person to help out, or then the case manager could reach out to people in the school system, but very rarely does that happen. Like, I think families get taken into DCF and foster care, there's shame and all that, and they don't want to reach out to that school, or if a school counselor was working with them. But then if that child's removed and then placed in another home, they're usually in a totally different school. And that's why another thing when I was a social worker is the agency at the time was really hoping to solve that problem of, when we remove a child, can we keep them in their home school first, or at least in the same area, to keep that support network? Because if not, you're just removing them, taking them to a whole nother community, and that school has no idea what's been going on with that child, and they couldn't have supported as much as the other school that knew the backstory and knew the life of that child. But once a child is removed from a home with DCF, it really is hard, and the legalities of finding out and helping, like a teacher wanting to know, where did that child go and stuff. It's the helplessness. And as a Christian, though, and I would say if anyone else was a Christian, is like prayer is the number one tool to keep you connected, and just keep praying for that family and that child.
I can relate to that, because I am the one that will, if I see anything that is happening with, I don't care being an executive director, I don't care being a case manager, if I see a parent with a child and doing any type of legal activity that I know is not healthy for the child, I have the personality where I will walk up to the car and be like, hey, pull around here real quick. Let me holler at you real quick. Let me talk to you real quick. Because the habit that you have is unhealthy for the child. And so whether there's no illegal activity that is happening, I'm telling you, this is a habit that ultimately can rub off on your child as they become older. But also, I know the unhealthy habits that come with this, you know, and I think that it's really important for sometimes people to not just say something once they find out about the exploitation, but it's the things of, like you said, that your county is doing, that you have done, getting involved with families now. Yeah. Because that's where it starts. We talk about this all the time, and just not just with the Institute, but through the podcast about, it starts with vulnerability. Right. And knowing that if my home it may not feel unsafe, but it's chaotic. You know, having a parent or a caretaker that has a bad habit, you know, that shows a lack of self-discipline at the end of the day, ultimately sets the standard for what the child sees. Yeah. And it may not be, you know, doing drugs. It may not be that. Right. But it could be not being able to self-regulate their emotions. Right. And then they have anger issues of what we'll say, but really it's based on the home life and not having any type of coping skill or another outlet. And I just feel like sometimes it just gets so hard because even when you're sharing the fact that you lose contact, I immediately think, and I've actually seen this before in my previous profession, is I literally had a child that was being exploited, and they were at the school, had some behavioral things, wanted to mention suicide, and instead of involving the counselor, the school social worker immediately got involved, and instead of saying, hey, let's work out a plan, try to get dad and mom, let's try to figure out what is happening. Why is the child having running behavior? They're missing absences. It was an immediate request for removal of the school. Ooh, yeah. And there was I felt like there was a disconnect between just the school social worker and even the counselor. Yeah. Like, this is the safe person for them. Right. Why don't we give them an opportunity to, one, we all need to be communicating. And one thing that I've learned throughout my years in doing this work is cross-collaboration. Yes. Is extremely important. Yeah. Before we even bring outside parties in. Because I can agree, like, even with calling social service, would I have called social service on a parent that I might see smoking marijuana? Right. No. But will I have a conversation? Right. Would there be a warning? Right. Absolutely, there would be. But I think that sometimes we're very quick to do the immediate, let's call child welfare. Right. Versus what can we do to find out more information. Yeah. Is there a safe person in that child's life? Exactly. That we could possibly talk to get ahead of this, to even have a setup almost for someone going into care. What would you tell another school counselor that might come in contact with a 5th grader who's being exploited, and there are no physical signs of exploitation, but what are some things you would want somebody to know, like maybe some signs that you have seen or what they should do?
So if another counselor, and we have a 5th grader that's exploited, or at least I guess they're seeing, but no physical signs, you were saying. So like I loved that of getting more information and talking. The teacher, like there's a lot of kids that I see as a counselor and I see them weekly, but the teacher's with them for 7 hours. I'm only with them 25 minutes usually a week, and they're with them 6, every day. So talking with that teacher that's with them and listening to them of what they've observed in the classroom, and then talking to if there's a caregiver or guardian of any type other than that person that they believe is exploiting them, and talking with them. And then a lot of our not a lot, but if that child has been to another school, I know one of our things that we try to do is always call that school counselor before if they had moved schools multiple times to talk with them. And then, talking with, and then, like you said, that social worker acted alone. And our county, we're trying to do all teamwork and bringing the kids up and sitting down like with a conference before doing anything like that as a team, and with the psychologist, the social worker, and even a principal or teacher, and then even bringing in our supervisor at district if needed, and consulting. And so I know, but so meeting as a team, if there's no like emergency, like we always have to first rule out that, like, is that child in imminent danger now? And then if not, okay, let's try to not do anything like single-handedly. Let's collaborate as a team. Is there services that we can give them? Like we have clothing closets at our schools, and we have free meals and food services and stuff like that for that. But working with that, and then if there's another caregiver that is not the one that they believe is exploiting them, working with them to get them what they need. But before you make possibly,
because there's no physical evidence,
right?
And I think a lot of times we're looking for physical evidence,
right,
or a verbal word of these are the people that are harming me, versus, and sometimes that I've seen in my own experience, you know, we act on something and then it does more harm for the child. Yeah. Because if social services come out and they find no immediate danger, the child then goes back to a household that could be exploiting them. Right. And then put them in danger of never even returning to the school. Right. And I think one of the thoughts that I did have, as you were mentioning some of the protocols that you do all have in place, what happens if you get a kid that's a transfer? Mm-hmm. So I remember I was a transfer. Yeah. I was a girl coming out the group home or the foster home. Yep. I had already been exploited in the system. And it doesn't just have to be about Florida, right? Like we all, across the nation, there is different protocols for every state. What are the steps that you all take when you know, is there conversation about, hey, because I remember going to school and they didn't necessarily say, hey, we got trafficking kids coming to school. Right, no, but they did say, says that. Hey, the group home has a new set of kids coming. Yes. And there was no information given. There was no, I guess, awareness that was going to come. There was no chart that was going to come and say, hey, this kid has been sex trafficked from 11 to 13 at that time. Yeah. She's going to be coming to the school. Right. These are some of the risk factors. We're worried about her running from the school, from the placement. Do they give you guys any type of notice? And I'm not talking about the school, but I know, do they give you any notice at all about who's getting ready to enter into the school? Even if it's not just exploitation, but children with a history of trauma and abuse. Right. It would have to come from the case manager, so I have two stories. When I was my first job working for DCF as a case manager, I got 3 teenagers that had been removed from their home and placed in a group home, and the CPS was still investigating for sexual abuse, and they were homeless, possible sexual abuse, neglect, and one of the girls was developmentally disabled and wasn't receiving any medical services for her seizures and other things that she was getting. And they got placed in the group home and enrolled in a local high school. And I think they were out of high school for like a year and a half. Like the parent had just been keeping them home. And I, as the case manager myself, I went to the school and I talked with, I sat in those meetings because there was that parent was not with them. And I told the high school,
I would sit in the meetings, but I couldn't go in depth because the investigation wasn't even. That's the hardest thing with sexual abuse is because there's no physical, like, you can investigate all you want, but if the girls aren't going to tell the truth and no one's going to tell the truth around you, how are you going to figure out, oh, this is definitely have been. And that was the hardest part of dealing with sexual abuse cases as a case manager, because it was just all hush hush, and it was, people said stuff in the investigation stayed, but once they were removed from the home, everybody shut down and no one would say anything more. And so other than me going to the school, and I think the therapists at the time that they assigned, while we were still trying to get therapy involved, started communicating with the school. But if you don't have a person that's passionate in case management, the turnover rate for that job is very high. There would be no person to really connect all the dots and advocate for that child in school, and then it would be up to the teacher or the counselor. But counselors at high school have a lot more higher caseload than what I've only worked in elementary schools. And so so that story is with my girls that I had as a case manager, and I was the one to advocate. There was no assessment, and it was just me letting the administrators at the time coming to their and saying the girls were removed for this. It's still under investigation. They're going to start getting therapy. And but at least they had that communicated, because there's so many kids, like you said, that isn't communicated to the people at the school. And then on the on the counselor side this year, I had a girl that came in, and luckily she was placed with her grandma. So grandma called school right up and said, I want the school counselor to talk with my granddaughter. And then every week I would meet with her and just having that relationship. And so when they're placed with family members, they can get more support than, especially with a group home. And those girls kept running away from that group home all the time. So they'd try to go back home, even though there was no home to go to. And the police, if they would run on a Sunday night, I would turn my phone on Monday morning as a case manager, and I would drive out there and find them quicker than the detective, because I knew the 2 or 3 roads that they would get in my car. They wouldn't get in the detective's car. Yeah. So
you said a lot of really good points for people to know, especially even just as, let's say, a social worker, whether it's school social worker. Sometimes we do have to go above and beyond in our work.
Yeah.
Going out to get those girls. Yeah. Knowing, because you had established whether a rapport or information, you knew where they were. Yeah. And I think sometimes in our jobs there's this red tape. Right. There's always red tape. There's red tape where I am. And I'll share with you a story in a second. But I'm the girl that will get very close to the red tape. I won't cross the red tape, but I will get fairly, fairly close because I love what I do. And I love serving people, and I ultimately love walking alongside children. But another thing that you mentioned is also the fact of the importance of having that triangle, like you all are already doing in your county, at your school district, because that individual, that child that was being exploited, had a relationship with their grandmother. Yes. That was their safety person. And now you have a middle person, kind of like a buffer, someone that can say, hey, I'm now giving you permission. And also, she was probably telling her granddaughter, like, this is somebody safe that you can speak with. Right. And so it's so important, even probably as a school counselor, to building that rapport, I can imagine, with those families. I'll give you a prime example. So my own child actually had exhibited some things that happened, not necessarily some abuse, but, other kids do things. And so there was an incident that happened, and nothing like no child abuse or anything, but my radar started going up. Like, well, have I not talked to my daughter about if somebody tries to touch you, kiss you, all these things? So my mind is just going, because I'm like, this cannot possibly happen to my daughter. Like somebody that is a sexual abuse victim, survivor of human trafficking. Like, absolutely not. Lord, we ain't doing this. But you know what I did is every morning I watched my daughter's school. I drop her off, and their school counselor is there to greet the kids. And I love that. I didn't know she was a school counselor. I thought she was like a teacher, a regular administrator. So one day Evelyn was talking to me. She comes back home, and it's my baby girl's name. And she comes back home one day, and she's like, Mom, she's talking about the, like, drug-free, I guess, cane. Right. Not cane, but they were talking about bad things. Yeah. And my baby is literally in kindergarten. And I'm like, first off, there's not a lot of training, not only for the teachers, but education for children. Right. But it's so sad that we already have to talk about human trafficking with our children. I have to literally talk to my, at the time, my little girl in kindergarten about unsafe people. And not just because of, relationship violence or unhealthy friendships. Like, no, actually someone taking my child and trying to exploit them. And so anyway, she came home with these paperwork. So I was like, who is teaching you this stuff? Hold on now. Why I didn't even get a notice about this? Hold on. Did I sign something? Right. And so, of course, I go up to the school. And they're like, oh, no, her school counselor. I'm like, okay. So I heard the name. I kind of didn't follow up because I'm like, Oree, relax. It was unharmful. Like, just trust it. God got her. Well, then when a situation came up, I said, well, baby, who were you mentioning that you wanted to talk to? And she was like, oh, the counselor. And I'm like, the counselor? What counselor? And then when she said her name, and then I'm like, and then one day she got out the car and she said the lady's name. She was like, good morning, Miss such and such. And I'm like, oh, you're the counselor. And she was like, yeah, I'm the school counselor. And I felt just a relief that I was like, every morning she's out here, she sees all the kids. She knows the ones that are late. She knows the ones that are coming in, skipping by. She watches the cars. She sees the families. She sees the ones that walk. And I just thought that was so awesome to be able to spot something out, right? In that case, something physical or something that just was not healthy. Yeah. But then another thing was I was able to see her after hours one day, and I was open to being like, hey, Evelyn mentioned some things on the playground that happened, and I'm not sure what all precautions they all put in place, or how many people are out during playtime to monitor my child, but I don't want her under the jungle gym. And I said, but I am open if you can, see if Evelyn wants to talk to you. Do you know how big that took as a mom? Not on fear of they can take my kid or, like, what you about to tell them? Even though I don't do anything harmful to my child. I mean, I might always be patient with her, with my tone. But I was just like, would you mind? And she was like, yeah, if you've given me permission, I will gladly go by her classroom and see if she wants to talk about anything. I'm like, I just want to make sure nothing happened on the playground. I've been through foster care. I've been through a lot, and I want to protect my daughter. She was like, absolutely. But to be able to see my daughter establish a relationship or see her, I felt comfortable as the parent. Right. I felt that. And I think that there's sometimes not enough of that, not necessarily from the school counselor, but we don't know the parents. Right. We don't know them. We don't really have a lot of engagement. What could you speak to if a child, there was no physical signs? Do you know of, like, how do you know? Because I'll briefly tell you something. So I actually have a survivor sister. I'll just say that. And she was actually trafficked throughout her childhood, going to school every single day. Had no idea that the local community, that her family member, I think it was an uncle or something like that, was trafficking her. I mean, she knew that she was being trafficked. She didn't label it as trafficking. But I mean, literally elementary school. Since the 5th grade, would come home, be sold to like local community members every single day, all throughout middle school. Had no idea that that was even exploitation until she was the age of 18. And I asked her, like, how did we miss this? Right. How did we miss the signs? Was there any signs? Right. But every single day she went to school, she played, I think, volleyball.
Wow.
Like a normal life.
She was very involved.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And we see that a lot in familial trafficking,
where
a parent or a family member is trafficking the child.
Yeah.
And it becomes a normal, it's so normalized to where they don't even know that they're a victim.
Right.
Or they think that's a part of their culture. Or what we're seeing now is like local tribal members that live on reservations that end up being exploited and trafficked, because that happens as well. And so I don't know, what would you say to that? How could we combat something that we can't see?
Right. And then for her stance, like her grades were good too. Like she was able to keep face and keep really good grades, because that's something we look for is the grades. She was on volleyball, so she had a coach and teammates to talk to. Because as a school, especially if it was middle school, they talk to kids when the grades start slipping. Okay. And we look for, like you said, drastic changes. Like I had a girl come in this year. She had beautiful hair, 8-year-old, and then one day just buzzed, all gone. And like the teacher was like, "Get down here," and talk to her and try to and the parent had not reached out to let the teacher know, my daughter's coming with buzzed hair today. And so, and it was cool though, in that conversation, I was able to talk with her because I had that preventative curriculum and she had watched the Safer, Smarter Kids. So she could tell me who was in her trusted triangle. Like you said, when it's familiar people, and that's even the case with the girls that I told the story about there, like they kept wanting to go back to their mom, even though the mom was the exploiter and knew all the abuse that had happened. That's all they knew. They knew nothing else. And why would I go to this scary group home where they don't, the other girls treated them really bad at the group home. I can imagine. And so, but I think when someone can do face that well, like she went to school, put on a good, it ends up hopefully having someone like a coach, or I'm thinking of like a youth pastor or something, someone close that they're able to share life with. I think at the middle school age, or a friend hearing like, oh, my family doesn't do that. And maybe that friend then talking to their mom and being like, hey, that doesn't sound healthy or normal.
It doesn't sound normal.
That relationship with your family is a little bit more unhealthy than I've ever heard of. So I think with that, it's more relational, and hoping that there's someone in there that can ask those questions and challenge them on the boundaries that they're seeing. So
you said something that's making my mind go, because I've never heard it before when we talk about, so there's a lot of sometimes organizations that do more so the peer-to-peer education, right? We talk about peer-to-peer, tell somebody. But the way you broke it down to say, how do I challenge my friend?
Right.
So even if someone is a parent,
right,
and teaching their children how to be a good friend.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not just about peer pressure. It's also about like, hey girl, like that's not normal. Right. I don't think that's normal. Right. Yep. And not just saying something, but challenging someone in a loving and gentle way out of protection to say, we don't do that in my family. We don't love like that. I'll never forget, I actually got a friend that told me that because I was going through my healing, and she was like, we don't love like that. Mm-hmm. That's not the way that we love here.
Right.
And I couldn't do anything but respect it. And also like, okay, what are they talking about? Mm-hmm. But I can only imagine that was what you said makes me think how it's also important for counselors to have their ear and the school ear to even the kids, because they're going to know. Like they know their friends. I know for me in my work, I'm not necessarily being the counselor, but when I was a case manager and doing that work, I hear everything.
Yeah.
Especially as the community case manager.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing all the gossip. I know who's doing what. I know who's doing what drug. I know what happened over the weekend because they calling me. You know, I even have clients from another contract work that I do, and they were calling me over this weekend. Like, girl, let me tell you what happened. And, you know, you still keep it professional. I'm like, oh, really? Okay. And then I know how to then address it. By not saying like somebody's ratted or their language nowadays snitched on me. But I'm like, so how was your weekend? What'd you do this weekend? And they immediately like, Miss Oree, don't ask me that. Who told you something? I'm nobody. I'm just asking how your weekend was. Why are you defensive?
Yeah.
And that was just a great point that you made about, you know, it is important for peer-to-peer relationships.
Yeah.
For the children, because a child being exploited, that we can't physically see the signs. Somebody knows something.
Yep.
And we also have to be willing to teach our children, and even teachers.
Yes.
I'm assuming to really educate them on. How do we teach them how to be good friends and not reporting something but challenging? I just like the language that you use with that. Like, let me challenge this because this is not what a healthy family does.
And I think the power in, like I was saying, is parents, like, ask your kid how their day went. Like, you just asking how your kid's day went might have had and then listening to what they have to say about people around them. To catch that.
Because I know my natural instinct as a parent is I'm already watching the children that Evelyn gravitates to. I'm already watching that. And at one point, there was a little girl, cute little girl. But something in my spidey senses is just like, based on the family, I'm just like, I'm not really comfortable with you. You can hang with her, but something in my body, I'm just like, I don't trust my daughter with another kindergarten. Another kindergartner. You know how sad that is? I was just like, I'm like, that little girl been exposed to something. I can't put my finger on it. And all I can see is you trying to play house with my baby. And did I back off the child? No. I just put my boundary up. Teach Evelyn about boundaries. Tell her, like, no, we don't do sleepovers. But I'll take you to the playground and let you play with her. But I also am mindful of my interaction with her. You know, that when I do see her, I speak to her. And I tell her, you look so beautiful. And like, did you have a good day today? Because I know that there is something. You know, and it really does take collaboration. It really does. And hopefully in the future, we have a lot more tools to see what we need to see. Because I know that I could only imagine it's so hard when you get the different personalities with kids that might have been exploited or vulnerable to exploitation when they come in your office, whether if they're like more of the extrovert, introvert kind of kid. But like, I hope that there are more tools in the future to do that. What resources would you say, outside of the other curriculum that you all do, is available to counselors, or what advice would you give them to become more informed, more educated, or what they could have in their toolbox to just grow in this knowledge?
So I would say, researching it yourself, looking for podcasts like this one or in that topic. There is, like, our county gives us more like conflict resolution and stuff like that. And then there's, social responsibility stuff for school counselors and teachers. There isn't that much on that. So researching, I know there's even like picture books on safe touch, not safe touch and stuff like that for kids. But I think looking up books yourself, listening to people's testimonies. And then the number one thing, though, that last story brought up is I love to do I have to fit it in my schedule. I have to create the time as a school counselor to do this. I know middle and high school counselors, it's even harder, but having lunch bunches with the kids and just talking with them is my favorite thing. And then the kids see that special time that that school counselor gets to have with, I usually take like 5 or 6 kids. And then out of that lunch bunches, then I had some kids this year like, oh, I want to just go back to your office and talk with you. And then big conversations were able to come about because of that. But I think the lunch bunches, that just opens up, like, I'm not here just to be the school counselor, to be the person who, does the lessons and the paperwork and stuff. I'm here because I really care and I want to, know about your life genuinely. And they saw that and they loved that time. But as a school counselor, any county or that type of or school will be like that. How are you going to fit that? You have to make the time to fit that, which I feel like though is the most important part of my job, is to make sure they're safe, and so I fit it in through all those meetings and all that.
It sounds like you have to be really involved, and like you said before, things you shared, invested in these kids' life.
Yeah.
And there's resources out there. We also have to dig for them too.
Yeah.
It may not be all of what we need.
Right.
But it's something
right.
that can get us started.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
I hope to see you back.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us again on the Trafficking Free America podcast. Please comment below for more resources because we have them. Also, view our website along with visiting the United States Institute Against Human Trafficking website for more information.